We got a good crowd.
Oh, yes, I read him.
You mean, squeeze over there. I'll get the B-roll after we get rolling. It's all about publicity. You gonna get your B-roll? I can't blame you. Much appreciated.
Sharon?
Yeah, appreciate it. Grab B-roll. Grab B-roll. You can't zoom in because you know how to do it. Grab B-roll if I can. Try to get
I know. See?
That'd be real good. What problem is
128 acre tract. I can't believe it. It doesn't take you back in time.
where I hunted, bought it.
Make it last.
It's a forest.
Wait, now you're
About 150
I'm still gonna test.
backs up and actually pretty good. 150 acres.
I don't want to.
It's also quite a bit of field, it's about 100 acres field. But a lot of he's probably still with his I would put some makeup on the back of my head if I know they were going to be here.
Okay, I'm going to open this meeting of the Patrick County Board of Supervisors, and I'd like for you all to rise, please. Reverend Mike Hughes is going to deliver our invocation.
Father, we love you. Thank you for this afternoon, Father. We've prayed for this for a long time. Thank you for engaging our community, Father. We love you and praise you. I pray that you just keep peace and order over us today, and I just thank you for your direction. Thank you for the leadership, and Lord, and I just thank you for our voice. Love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. And now I'd like to ask our veterans in the audience to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you will remain standing for just a moment, we'll observe a moment of silence in regard to all of our veterans serving now, in the past, and in the future, both abroad and in CONUS. Thank you. You may be seated. I will now entertain approval of the meeting agenda. I would like to add to the meeting agenda, first thing, that we discuss the situation we have with Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad. Thank you. So do I have a motion that we approve the meeting agenda? Need a motion from the board. Okay. Mr. Fulcher makes the motion. Do I have a second? I have a second.
Was there a change to the agenda?
Yes.
I didn't understand the change.
I want to discuss briefly the Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad situation.
Right, that's under new business, right? Or,
That would be under, first thing under new business.
okay. Second.
All right, Mr. Weiss seconds. Is there any discussion? In that case, I'll ask for a vote. Ms. Fulk? Mr. Fulcher? Ms. Harris? Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, so the agenda is approved. Approval of the meeting minutes from past meetings. Got a motion for that?
Make a motion.
Ms. Harris makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And Ms. Fulk seconds. Any discussion over the meeting minutes? In that case, I'll ask for a vote. Ms. Fulk? Mr. Fulcher? Ms. Harris? Mr. Weiss? I vote aye as well. Meeting agendas, minutes are approved. Approval of the bills in your packet, the claims and
Chairman
appropriations.
Boyce, if I could, I'd like to move that until after our executive session.
All right, after the executive
Yes, sir,
session.
please.
It's fine with me. Now we're going to public comment.
We need to make that a motion.
Well, let's make it up, do we? I think we just shift something in order. You don't need to go through all that tap dance. It's good. Okay. Approval of the bills, claims, and appropriations will be,
I think we approve the agenda as it is, so.
well, I mean, we're moving something down the agenda. Let's move it on. I got a full plate here. I want to get going. One of y'all wants to make a motion. One of you wants to second it. Okay. Mr. Fulk? Ms. Fulk makes the motion. Mr. Fulcher seconds it. Any discussion on it?
What's the motion?
The motion is that we move approval of the bills, claims, and appropriations until after executive session. All righty. Need a vote. Ms. Fulk? Mr. Fulcher? Ms. Harris? Mr. Weiss?
No.
No. I vote aye as well. Mr. Weiss votes against. I vote for. All righty. So now we're taking comments from the citizenry. And the first one we have is Reverend Daniel Spencer from Peters Creek. How are you, Mr. Spencer?
I'm doing fine.
Very
Thank
good
you,
to
sir.
see you, sir.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me to be able to speak to you guys.
Daniel, if you're speaking, there you
Yes.
go.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And you know, when we stood up and pledged allegiance to the flag, it said liberty and justice for all. Last week, when I was informed about the Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad, and they had this neo-Nazi, this racist, that was a part of that. And when I read some of the articles, if they were true, I was very appalled. As a matter of fact, I still am. I'm as mad now as hell is bad. Because we have an individual, and I'm from this county, that is on the rescue squad, and he is being paid with tax dollars that I have to pay. I probably have to pay as much or more than most people in this room right now in taxes. And I refuse, and again, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the stand that you're taking based upon what I read. I don't know if I can say that about any of the others, because it seems like we want to put it aside and say, well, let's just wait. But at any rate, we need to do something about this. And let's remember that last year, the young lady that got killed in Charlottesville, she was not a black individual. She was a young white lady. And these neo-Nazis, this country, this county, has no room for neo-Nazis, for Klansmen, or whoever the case may be, racists. We're living in the 21st century, not the 20th, not the 19th, not the 18th century. And you folks have a responsibility. You've been voted in to oversee this county. And you have a responsibility to do something about this, and you can do it. Now, I'm hopeful that you will, because this is not a threat, because if this individual is allowed to stay on that squad, and we pay him with our tax dollars, I can assure you, this is not gonna die, folks. It's not gonna die. Even if we have to bring in lawyers to represent us, and I'm in the process of getting in touch with some lawyers right now, because we have no room for this, folks. I mean, this is, if it's true what I read, that this individual, he goes around on this particular site talking about and calling African Americans animals, yeah, I'm mad as hell is bad. I'll tell anybody that. And this needs to change. And if we allow him, if you folks allow him to stay on this, believe me, it's not going to die at all. And if it's true about he was parading around in a emergency room with needles, harassing a young black individual, then I can't see how you can see in your conscience to let this individual stay on that particular, he needs to be fired, period. And not only that, but it's my understanding, if it's true, that the captain investigated it and said he was all right. Well, he needs to go too. It's simple as that. We cannot have this in this county. I'm from this county, grew up in this county, went to school in this county, have a residence in this county. And for you as supervisors, for the county administration, to use my tax dollars to pay him with what he's doing, do you not have a conscience? And you supervisors who have said, if it's true, that, well, let's just wait and see what plays out. No, it's no time for waiting and see what plays out. Because if necessary, I will personally, and I know of some others, we'll have an investigation by the state police and the FBI, not only in this county, I mean of the individual, which there already is an investigation of him, but in investigating this board. I hope we don't have to get to that, because I have a gut feeling that he's not the only one that needs to be investigated. So my thoughts and my hope and my prayers is that we can get rid of this individual. We can't have this in today, folks. This is just a shame to talk about individuals and call them animals. And let me make some, without patting myself on the back, I'm probably as smart as anybody in here. Probably got as much education as anybody in here. And I don't like for people, whether they black, white, blue, green, yellow, red, to be talked about and called animals. And in a life or death situation, do you think that I want this neo-Nazi around me? Easily said, well, he just died. We couldn't help it. No, I don't want that. I don't want anybody, black or white, for this individual to be around and to be working on them. And I don't think you want to be him around you. So I took time out to come up here to let you know that I hope that you will do something about this, and you have the power to withhold funds, and I hope that it doesn't get to that, because we need the EMT. We need people, we need rescue people, but at the same time, we don't need this individual. He needs to go, period. And again, I'm gonna emphasize, and it's not a threat, because I have the funds to do it, to bring in high-powered people to take care of this situation if it needs to be. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Next we'd like to hear from Reverend Don Johnson. He is from the Mayo River District.
Thank you. I've lived here 14 years, the longest I've ever lived any place in my life. I've been a minister in 2 denominations, a college chaplain, and senior leader of the New York Society for Ethical Culture. I want to mention that last one because I want to share an event that happened when I was the leader in New York of that society. We met on Sundays for our programming, along with a lot of weekday events. One of the staff people told me there's a man down in the lobby, he has a Nazi armband, and he's carrying Hitler's Mein Kampf. This organization was founded in 1876, and it's open to people of all different faiths. It puts the emphasis on ethics rather than a particular theology, so there are people who are Catholic, Buddhist, Sikh, Jewish, Christian, and a number of other groups, as well as people who are not of any particular faith. So I went down to the lobby to meet this person, and there he was, and it had been explained to me, and I said to him, I'm sorry, you will not be able to stay in our lobby if you leave on that armband and carry that book. He immediately said, I have freedom of speech. I said, I totally agree. If you want to go out front, on our steps, on the sidewalk, out front and protest with a sign and yell whatever you want to, you have the right to do that. But this is a place where people gather who have ideas about how we treat each other.
Amen.
And one of the things that's extremely important is that I had just met that week with one of our older members who was in her 80s, and she shared with me her grief of having survived the concentration camps. She and a cousin survived. 117 members of her family were killed in concentration camps. She had trouble living with the fact, felt guilty that she had actually survived. So knowing there are people in that place, inside that building, who would be deeply disturbed by this person's idea of what his freedom of speech is, I told him he would need to leave. He said, what if I won't? I said, then I will call the police and we'll have you removed. I share that story because I want to use it in relationship to what I'm saying here. Words matter, and they reveal our identity. He had his identity on his sleeve and in the book he carried. A basic ethic in health and medical service is do no harm. Do no harm.
Amen.
Mr. McNabb has, at minimum, damaged the reputation of every fair-minded, compassionate emergency technician in this county.
Amen.
He has besmirched this county's name
Yes.
and its citizens by his hate-filled neo-Nazi
Yes.
views and expressed words spoken and written publicly. He says these things. And this is the most important point to me. And he is in a position of power, in one sense, because he is in a position when there is someone who has an illness they need to be treated for, or has been in an accident situation, or in some condition that leads them to feel immediate vulnerability, they need to know they are going to be serviced by persons who accept the equality of all persons.
That's right.
And to do it compassionately.
Yes.
His words will now stereotype to this host nation. Embarrassing news to see in the Washington Post, this event about Patrick County. Embarrassing.
That's right.
His portrayal leads to people assume that we're all this way. This is the way we think. Unless this board, our representatives, is very clear with a statement that says, we will not condone such behavior.
Amen.
He has freedom of speech to spout whatever he wants, as despicable as those words may be to me and to many others. But he should never be an employee of an organization that receives public funds that are funding intended for the health care of the public.
Amen.
I spent some time this week on his show, listening to he and others in 4 or 5 different segments. He is a major figure on a program called The Daily Shoah. Shoah is a Hebrew word meaning fire. To people in Judaism, it is a word used to describe the Holocaust.
That's right.
And he's used this term, the Daily Shoah, to ridicule them and the Holocaust.
That's right.
It relates to a group of organizations which are focused on racism and anti-Semitism. The website supports white nationalism. They oppose, and these are words from their sites, they oppose intermarriage, along with favoring a return to racial purity of the white race. The blog has voiced preferring the United States to move to a white-only immigration policy, along with supporting ethnic cleansing to make this U.S. a white ethnic state. Such views cheapen the service of every World War II veteran who fought, and for those who lost their lives especially. Should anyone who wants to see ethnic cleansing of Jewish people and people of color ever qualify to be an EMT?
No.
With anti-Semitism and ridicule, with black stereotypes that are dehumanizing, humiliating, and hateful towards black people as a pattern. How can such a proponent put a uniform on and treat all with respect when their lives might depend on it?
Can't do it.
Who can be sure of that? He was a proud Charlottesville participant and supporter of those who shouted, "Jews will not replace us, and you will not replace us," while carrying torches to imitate others. He tweeted support this past week for the man convicted of driving his car into a crowd that led to the death of Heather Heyer.
That's right.
Imagine an emergency medical technician supporting someone crashing a vehicle into a crowd. Most of us would more likely refer to that as supporting a terrorist.
Yes.
Now for me, the major point, I'm almost through here, is that all of us carry some biases. Doesn't matter who we are. We have our own set of biases. We hopefully are monitoring ourselves and trying to improve those. But the reality is, we have been taught ways that, in some way or another, we're all likely to make some judgments of other people. The difference is, this is not just about words, but about the vulnerability, as in those situations, prejudice and power linked together.
That's right.
And in this, he has power at the moment, being in this situation, of opening up the whole EMT organization and Patrick County to liability issues. Unsettled consequences will remain unless we send a clear message. People will wonder, are there more like him? Has no one ever known about this or ever supported him and allowed this to point. This has brought public embarrassment and could harm commercial enterprises and have tourist consequences for this county as well.
That's right.
It might harm charitable donations to the EMT itself and to other local charities if this route continues to be ignored or allowed. The only way that we can deal with this issue to protect the integrity of this county, to make it clear that we do not condone such behavior, is for this board, this county board of supervisors, to at the minimum, making a strong statement that makes it clear we are not condoning such behavior on the part of any individual, and certainly not anyone who's on a payroll and who's in power where they can have some decisions made towards others that are inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. I have C. Thomas here for Peters Creek District. Hello, Charlie. How are you?
Good to be back with you guys one more time.
Good to be back to see you
On
always.
this occasion.
Yes, I feel the same way.
You guys, you know who I am. I guess most of you know more about me than I do myself, but the reason I'm here tonight, well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Back in 60s, when I drafted in the Army, couldn't work anywhere here, but I was drafted, sent to Vietnam. I didn't join the Army. And I thought we got away from this stuff. You know, I could go on back how they treated my daddy when he was rich. Couldn't even come to the hospital bill. You know, I thought things changed. But I look at this neo-Nazi we got here in the Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad. You know, I don't know why it seems like Patrick County is a magnet for a lot of hate groups, but they all over. We think Adolf Hitler dead. No, you cannot kill a demon. You know, and just imagine if you was a black person needing a medical help, call the rescue, thinking you're gonna get some help. The chances of dying in that rescue vehicle are greater than if you stayed home, but you didn't know it. You know, and someone that sat on a board that has so much hate, I don't think Lord Boss is trying to destroy the rescue. They're doing it to themselves, but not getting rid of such a person. There's no way you can work around a person and not see a little something back. And this guy, he's got so much hate in his heart. If any black person got on that rescue squad, they better have somebody else in there, because they may not make that trip alive, you know. So I say fire him, or you can pull the funds. If any taxpayers' funds is in this, they should be pulled. Because no such person should be on there, because what would he do to a person of color? I mean, I can see no reason not to fire him if they want to keep the funds. If any taxpayers' money in these funds, or salt billing, paying the insurance company, you do it. Don't blame Dr. Locke Boys. They're doing it to themselves for keeping somebody like this down there, you know. And I'm not saying you should change Jeb Stuart's name. Just change your game. I don't want to done away with Jeb Stuart and none of his other rescue squads. But that demon-possessed man has got to go. And that is nothing good for Patrick County. I mean, let's get away from that stuff we done back in the 60s, 70s.
Amen.
I pay taxes, and I honor all the amendments, all 10 of them, not just the first two, right to bear weapons and freedom of speech. I try to go along with all of them, as I understand. So I'm not against guns, but I am against this crap that's going on in the rescue, that they want taxpayers to support.
Amen.
Mr. Foster, you represent the people of Peters Creek. I haven't heard you speak up and say anything about it. Have you got a clue on your tongue?
All right.
I haven't seen anything, read anything. You got a chance tonight to speak up and put your views. I don't think nobody's trying to put them out of business, but we do want to take care of this situation. We don't want our money thrown away from somebody
Amen.
that put us out of existence and we think we're getting help.
Amen.
And I thank you guys for letting me make my little 2 cent worth. And let's see, can we move on and do the right thing?
All right.
Thank you, Charlie. I would now like to call on Karen Spencer, also from Peters Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I echo, I can talk loud enough that everybody can hear me, but I echo the sentiments of what's already been said here this evening. And Mr. Ricky, I have talked to you. Thank you for the sentiments you have expressed to me, and you were very forthright to come to the telephone when I called you. So all of us whom you represent can call you. You're elected for that. So I would encourage all of your constituents to give you a call. But echoing the sentiments that have already been said, I have read all of the current information that's available. I don't know whether it's completely true. I do know Mr. McNabb applauded the first speaker who was here, and I applaud him for being here. It might not be the best move, but I applaud him for being here tonight, and I will cross the depths of the ocean for him to have his freedom of speech. But I also have freedom of speech, and I also have the freedom to pay taxes in this county.
That's right.
So with my freedom of tax payment, I would ask you to consider not withdrawing full support of Jeb Stuart, but while the investigation is going on, as may have already been done, that you would withdraw your support of Mr. McNabb continuing as an EMT. As the good pastor said, I am among the profession whose motto is, first, do no harm. It is not our business to do harm. It's not his business to represent my profession as doing harm. So I would encourage all of us to speak directly with our representatives and allow them to know that, I lost my other paper, by the way, but allow you all to know that federal injustices, as is occurring right now, will not continue. Not in this county, and chances are not in the state of Virginia with Mr. McNabb in their employ. I've already spoken to 2 representatives here, and as the first speaker said, not a threat, but federal representatives are ready to come in to investigate Patrick County for the racism that apparently exists within the Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad. And Derek, whom I know, is the captain. If he condones keeping this Mr. McNabb on staff, he is terribly misguided.
He needs to go too.
And that will probably conclude in the investigation. And once again, it's not a threat, but we are all under siege by the rhetoric of Mr. McNabb. And as has already been said by some of the speakers, none of us, Grandma might get hit by a reindeer, but not many of us would want to be in a squad with Mr. McNabb alone. If we get hit, if Grandma gets hit by a reindeer, who's to say? He said, Grandma's too old. So let's discontinue with any treatment. But I do applaud him for coming. I will cross the depths of the ocean for him to have his freedom of speech, but we will also have our freedom of speech. I encourage you not to condone what's going on. We're all surrounded by racists, and we have been all of my life, Mr. Thomas. We've worked with them, we've gone to school with them, we're still surrounded by them. But none of them, most of them are not so emboldened to express it the way it has been expressed by calling non-white people animals and torturing or allegedly torturing non-white individuals in a public healthcare setting. I encourage you all not to condone it and to dismiss the opportunity for him to continue to be employed, indirectly employed in Patrick County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. So now we'll hear from Mr. Ren Williams. Mr. Williams is the attorney for Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad. With him is Derek Wagner, who's the captain of the Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad.
Good evening. As Dr. Boyce said, my name is Ren Williams, and I'm an attorney here in Patrick County. I've been working alongside of Derek and Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad, volunteering my legal services pro bono in their time of need. Over the last several days, this squad has been dealing with a situation involving Mr. Alex McNabb. Since November of 2017, Mr. McNabb has served as a part-time paid EMT for Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad. His job was to cover calls that our volunteers were unable to cover during normal business hours. He worked about 24 hours per month and was paid using funds obtained from soft billing insurance companies, not county funding. Recently, a Huffington Post article surfaced wherein Mr. McNabb was accused of being a racist neo-Nazi. The article cited Mr. McNabb's regular contributions to an internet radio show. There is nothing defensible about what was discussed on this show or the statements that Mr. McNabb made while appearing as himself or his fictional character, Dr. Narcan. Let me be very clear. Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad does not condone, support, agree with, or look with favor upon Mr. McNabb's comments regarding others' race and religions. His statements, true or not, fiction or nonfiction, are wrong, indecent, and do not represent Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad, its members, or the citizens of Patrick County. However, as has been pointed out many times, Mr. McNabb has the right to free speech. In fact, the Supreme Court reaffirmed this as recently as April of 2017, that there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. I've included a copy of the Washington Post article stating the same in your packet tonight. I've heard people say, yes, but freedom of speech doesn't protect your job, especially in Virginia. We're an at-will state. Let me tell you now, I agree. However, there's always more to the story. On Monday, following Huffington Post article's release, Mr. McNabb was placed on unpaid leave pending the state's investigation. He was told not to return to station number 3, which is Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad, not to run calls with us as a paid staffer or as a volunteer, and not to post online about Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad. On Wednesday, the board of directors of Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad met and ratified this decision regarding Mr. McNabb. Many of our members have already been contacted and interviewed regarding their time working with Mr. McNabb, and we hope that the state will conclude its investigation shortly, but I doubt it. I say this because ultimately the question will no longer be whether Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad should or should not terminate Mr. McNabb. Instead, the question will be, should Mr. McNabb be allowed to keep his certification as an EMT? The Office of EMS is the authoritative body regarding this decision, not Jeb, not the County Board of Supervisors. Soon, I believe the Office of EMS will find itself sitting around a table in a room full of public relations officers and constitutional lawyers discussing whether it would be best to leave Mr. McNabb's certification in place and face the public outrage, or face the lawsuit certain to come from Mr. McNabb's certification being revoked for things that he has said while off duty. Certainly, Jeb Stuart has every right to fire Mr. McNabb for what he has said. So why wait? What's the holdup? Here is our answer. We must protect Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad from all litigation stemming from any wrongful termination. Now that Mr. McNabb has been placed on unpaid leave, we know that he cannot harm any individuals under our care. We have now begun to focus on making sure that we are here to continue to serve Patrick County and its citizens in the future. There are some that would have you believe that we shouldn't fear a lawsuit because we'd certainly win. The UVA attorney in the Huffington Post article even stated that we would have a, quote, pretty good argument, end quote, for firing Mr. McNabb. That's the problem. It's an argument. Arguments are only heard in courtrooms with lawyers in front of judges after extensive litigation. I don't want to get to the end of a lawsuit to determine whether or not Jeb Stuart did the right thing. We can't afford it. It will bankrupt Jeb Stuart. There are some that have you believe that Mr. McNabb would only file a complaint with the VEC and our unemployment insurance would go up. However, this is short-sighted. Mr. McNabb has every right and the financial backing of the far-right political movement known as the alt-right to file suit in any court in the country. Don't believe me? Read his Twitter feed. I've included some screenshots with your packet tonight. Mr. McNabb will be a martyr for the alt-right, and he is proud of it. Unfortunately, over the last few days, Dr. Boyce has made comments that have now drugged the county into the deployment matters of a private nonprofit organization. Dr. Boyce acts as though we must speak for the county, as though he must speak for the county, saying that Patrick does not support this type of racist activity. That's great. I agree. Stand up and say those things. All of you. I encourage you to do that. I'm a citizen of Patrick County, and I want you to make that statement. That is your right, and that will be what's best for the county. However, please don't drag the county any further into this debacle. I fear that Dr. Boyce thinks it's necessary to make an example of Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad by withholding funds to the squad until Mr. McNabb is terminated. He suggests the funds withheld will only be those that are non-essential, those that are not 911 related funding. However, I ask you, what funding given to a rescue squad is not 911 related funding? To my knowledge, the squad is scheduled to receive its annual contribution from the county. The squad is also scheduled to receive the rotating capital improvement money to the tune of roughly $80,000 or more. This money is given to one squad each year for improvements to their equipment. The squad was looking forward to receiving this money in order to find matching grants to replace their oldest and most costly to maintain ambulance. I can only think that Dr. Boyce, one who is adamant about doing anything for the volunteers of Patrick County, specifically his squad, would know and understand how crippling any additional action taken against Jeb Stuart would be. We're already fighting against potential litigation and working tirelessly to regain the trust of our citizens. Do not hamstring us in providing services to this county. I ask you now, what happens if Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad no longer exists because it has been bankrupted by litigation? What happens if we can no longer answer any calls? Who picks up that slack? The county paid EMS service? And who pays for that additional expense? How? With what money? Please take my advice in this situation and do not support Dr. Boyce's call to withhold funding to the squad. We are handling the matter with due process. Due process is guaranteed under the Constitution. A decision that has been made, a decision that has been supported by the Department of Health, the Virginia Employment Commission, every legal and HR professional I have spoken with about this matter, and the countless articles I have read on HR law and the First Amendment since stepping in to help Jeb Stuart. Sure, by all means, make a statement that Patrick County does not stand for this type of behavior. I agree, but don't go any further. As a county, protect yourself, protect us, your citizens, from being dragged into costly litigation. Litigation that I've heard threatened tonight already from what I would consider the other side. If you do not give Mr. McNabb or any others reasons to blame you for actions you've taken, you will have done your job in protecting our limited and valuable resources. My supervisor is Mr. Fulcher, and the other night he said that hindsight is 20/20. I want all of you to look back on tonight and say, I'm glad that we didn't pull Jeb Stuart's funding, because that was the trap that pulled us into this litigation. Make your statement, condemn Mr. McNabb and his online presence, but do not act any further against Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad until we are able to finish this investigation and the estate has made its decision. Thank you for your time tonight. I look forward to your comments.
Mr. Chairman, I know I have spoken, but may I address this because it's
Absolutely.
Because it's obvious that we have more neo-Nazis in the building right now.
I agree.
Did he just call me a neo-Nazi?
Yes, he did.
I didn't.
Did you just call me a neo-Nazi?
If the shoe
He
fits
did
where
not
he
call
call
you.
you,
He
he
did
did
not
not
call
call
you
you there. He
shoe
said
fits
more
where,
in the building.
okay?
Don't try to
Hey
lie.
guys,
The
I
shoe
believe
fits where.
Reverend Spencer has the floor, and
I look forward to my rebuttal, Chairman.
you bet, buddy.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your stand, and I applaud it. And again, I have to call if it acts like a duck, it's a duck. If it walks like a duck, it's a duck. If it smells like a duck, it's a duck. And it's obvious by some of the statements that he made that he is, and I'll call it again, he obviously has to be a neo-Nazi based upon the statements that he made. To criticize you, an individual, in your beliefs, yeah, I'm appalled at that. I'm upset at that because you made a stand, because you believe in people. You believe in doing what's right. Now, as I made the statement, no, I haven't threatened a lawsuit, but I can tell you right now, as I stated to the board, to each and every one of you, and I can promise you that he's the one that made the statement that there will be litigation. That's fine, but if you don't make a statement and get rid of this neo-Nazi, I promise you, one more time, I promise you, I will get in touch with the state police, and I will get in touch with the FBI and have this board, not only this board, but the entire county. And I don't want to do that because I'm a member. I live in this county. And I will have them to investigate it. And Mr. Fulcher, I understand that you're between a rock and a hard spot, but you need to do what's right too, period. And you know it's wrong to have someone, a neo-Nazi, a Klansman, or whatever the case, working on a child of yours, or working on you, or working on one of your family members. You don't know what they're going to do. Again, I'm as mad as hell is bad to have these individuals, I don't care who they are, if they are a member of this organization, whatever they call it themselves and so forth, and I applaud this gentleman that read this in the information about how neo-Nazis, the hate group. Most of you, have you done research on how there were 10 million Jews that were killed, and these people walk around in this country, in Britain, not Britain, Germany, I think they are banned. But we allow these neo-Nazis to come in here, and this, I guess he calls himself an attorney, I don't know, but whatever. But don't go about what the rhetoric that he is presenting to each and every one of you. We don't have the luxury with an EMT of setting, well, let's just remain complacent and see what comes about. We don't have that luxury. People's lives are at stake, folks, with these people. And all he has to do is to go out on a call. If we approve it and let him continue, go out on a call. If someone has a heart attack, is he going to give the right things to do to keep that individual alive, or is he going to say, oh, well, he just died? I don't want that happening to not only to African Americans, not only to Jewish, but to anybody. Again, I emphasize, the young lady that died was not a Jew. Heather Hire, she was not a Jew. She was not a black person. She was a young, beautiful white lady with her whole life ahead of her. And this neo-Nazi, he condoned the murder of that young lady. Now, if he condoned the murder of that young lady, do you think that if we allow him to stay up on that rescue squad, that he's going to do his best to preserve life? I submit to you that he will not. And again, I emphasize, my tax dollars, if they begin to go to paying for this rescue squad, yes, I admit I'm for the rescue squad. We need it, but we don't need these individuals. And again, if the captain of it, if he condones that behavior, then he needs to go too. And we need to look somewhere else, because this needs to stop. The buck needs to stop with you tonight. We don't need to let it play out. It needs to stop tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alrighty. Did you want to respond to that, Mr. Williams?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I didn't plan on getting called a neo-Nazi tonight. That's the first. So, I had a conversation with my father-in-law recently as we were eating dinner on Friday night about this situation, and I wanted to get his take on it. And I said, what do you think I should do? And he said, well, I think you're doing the right thing. He said, put him on unpaid leave, suspend him, let due process run its course, and then let the board decide. He said, ultimately, you won't even have to make the decision, because there's no way the Department of Health is going to allow Mr. McNabb to keep his certification. And I said, well, I really appreciate your support. And the reason I appreciate it is because he is a first-generation Jewish man who moved to New York when he was very young, and his parents brought him over here, where they obviously had him as a first-generation American. And I love his daughter dearly, and I'm sure he's watching now and will appreciate backing me when I say, no, I'm not a neo-Nazi. I'm simply looking out for my client. My client is Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad. I want my client to survive this, and I want my client to be here in the future to support this county. This is the rescue squad that carried my friends off football fields. This is the rescue squad who answered the calls when my father got in a motorcycle accident. This is the same rescue squad who rushed my girlfriend down to Martinsville because our hospital didn't have antivenom. To call me a neo-Nazi is just a direct attack against me and me supporting what I think is best for the county and for the county's largest squad. I know that Dr. Boyce brought individuals in here to support his position and support his argument. I know that because I was here and I signed my name and Dr. Boyce chose to skip me on the list. I know that he wanted to present his side of the story through everybody that he could find, because Dr. Boyce knows that the majority of the county disagrees with him. And Dr. Boyce knows that he's turning his back on the volunteers. And that Dr. Boyce knows that the county can't afford not to support Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad in this time of need. Make your statement. Say your piece. Condemn the man. Do it. I agree. Then leave us alone. We will inform you what happens, and you will know that we will do the right job, just like we did this go-round. If we had fired this man based on a Huffington Post article, we would certainly be in litigation today. wisely, Derek Wagner, captain of the squad, called me and said, what do we do? I said, don't go public with anything. Stay quiet. Let's figure it out, and then we'll take action. We did. The next business day was Monday. Even in 12 inches of snow, we handled it. We called a meeting by Wednesday. The board, I stepped out. They had their discussion, and they decided to follow my lead on this. It was the right move. It's the right move that every county administration, every college, every police department makes. When something goes down, you put them on lead and you investigate the situation. You guys, and I really need to stop saying you guys, because it's not you guys, it's Dr. Boyce. Do not let him drag you down with this. Do not turn around and say, man, I wish I'd listened to Ren. Because there's been too many times where he has done that. He will strong arm you, he will strong arm the county, and he will send us right into debt alongside of this litigation that we do not need to find ourselves in. We can't afford it, and I think this is just a distraction from what we were supposed to talk about tonight, which was the budget and the audit. So please don't confuse yourselves. Please stand up against Dr. Boyce. Please, for goodness sakes, hold him accountable. Make him continue to be the respectable person that he's been on the stand tonight, because we know that is never the case, especially with these cameras around. I know that he's trying to stare a hole in my head right now because he cannot stand the things that I'm saying. And I'm the only one that will get up here to say that because he knows that he doesn't like me. And he knows the people behind me support me when I say that. And I request that all of you, the county supervisors that we know and love, come out against Dr. Boyce and stand up to him. You want to talk about standing up to hate? You want to talk about protecting free speech? No one will come in this room and say the words that I'm saying because of him. He bullies from the pulpit. He tries to manipulate and lie on that stand, and he will not face facts when they're presented to you. And we all sit quietly and wait, and then we read the truth in the newspaper. So do the right thing here. Don't listen to these threats. Again, I'll show you my bar card.
Threats, I promise you.
He's promising to sue. You're between a rock and a hard place. He doesn't have standing to sue. You know who will?
Watch me.
Standing is a legal term. Standing is a legal term, which means someone has the right to sue. He doesn't have any right now. You know who will? Mr. McNabb, if you take action against him. Okay? Listen to me when I say this. Don't forget these words. Don't do the wrong thing. Make your resolution, condemn him, and let's move on. Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
May I be recognized?
Absolutely.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Boyce, other members of the board. I thank you for this opportunity to speak. With all that I see here, it seems like we're trying to bring Charlottesville, Virginia to right here.
All right. That's right.
We don't really need that here in Patrick County.
That's right.
Mr. Boyce has been blamed for everybody being here, but I'm not here because of him.
Come on, tell it. Me
I ain't there.
I am here because of the articles that I've seen and what I've heard. Now, Patrick County has been in the national news, and for what it's there for, I don't think we need to be there for what it is. We're trying to build a county. We need employment. We need a hospital. We have rescue squads that I know are working themselves to death trying to serve this county. So far, I think they've done a very good job. So I'm wondering, why should we let this one individual come in and upset what we have done here with his wayward thinking that he has done, or that he has? We played that out in history many times, and it has no good ending. It never ends good. Now, I was a supervisor at J.P. Stevens for 15 years. I worked black and white. I had to treat them all the same. I could not let my thoughts get in the way of my supervision. And I had people that were honest, hardworking, that loved Patrick County. And I think with what we got going on here, if an industry or a new company wanted to locate and they saw us on CNN News, they would say, what have you got going on there? I do not blame Dr. Boyce with all
Amen.
this going on in this county.
That's right.
And I think you all are wrong to do so too.
That's right.
What is a workable compromise here? We are under the gun. We all are under the gun. We're making news right now that's gonna go over the nation. So therefore, I think if we can come to a workable solution and put this racism business out of here, and not only in the rescue squad, but any other organization that serves Patrick County, I think we would be miles ahead. And I would say, please, I know there's some good folk in this room. I know some people in here that has good ideas, they love God, and they want to do what's right. And with that being said, let's just think about it and work it out.
Thank you. So we've got,
I mean,
Karen's-
you've been talking about me this entire time.
are you Mr.
right?
McNabb?
I am Mr. McNabb.
Well, I've never met you.
You
Why don't
have
you-
met me. I guess maybe you just forgot.
Okay, well, I don't remember meeting you, you're kind of, weren't a memorable fellow. It is fair that you get a chance to respond.
Yeah, well, let me speak. I mean, I'm used to speaking. I'm an entertainer.
Yeah, we know that.
I want to make this very abundantly clear. I do a radio show, and I'm actually an entertainer. Okay, we do two things on our broadcast. We do political speech, which is protected by the First Amendment, and we do shock comedy. Okay, so what you're looking at right here is basically like a Marilyn Manson or somebody from the Jerky Boys, something like that. Okay, and that's why I'm here tonight. This is about free speech, which is under assault in this country. And I recall Ren said something about all rights. I'm not a member of any formal far right organization. This is a constitutional issue. This is about what we have a right to say in this country. And I will legally fight it if it comes down to that. I'm not the first person who's done this. I mean, Howard Stern has done some similar things. So that is what we're talking about tonight. And I've been called a neo-Nazi and a racist and all this other stuff. There's no proof I'm a neo-Nazi. There's been a smear campaign against me by the Huffington Post, which is basically just a corporate mouthpiece for anti-fascist action, which is a far-left terrorist organization. That's happened. I've been smeared by the far-left media, the media that did not care when your hospital shut down. Did the media report on Pioneer Community Hospital going under? Do you think they actually care about you? The media in this country is an enemy of the people, and they do not care about your community. This community didn't even make news until they found out that somebody was running an edgy radio show that a lot of people find very entertaining. Then suddenly we're in the spotlight. Now, why is that? Explain to me why that is. Do you think anybody in the media actually cares about you? They care about their latest witch hunt because they know it's going to sell some advertising. They know that they can make some money off of that, and the political climate is favorable to this kind of stuff. Every news source has reported on me, slurring me with like this stuff about he's a neo-Nazi, he's a white supremacist. What do they say about our president? They say the same stuff. Okay, these are liars. These are liars, and I'm the victim of this kind of smear attack, this witch hunt, and enough is enough. Now, do you have any questions? Do you want me to clarify anything?
Yeah, I do have a lot of questions for you. I'm going to read some of what was in the Huffington Post.
Amen.
And I want you to tell me, all
right.
Is this wrong? Is there something factually incorrect? Your show is called The Daily Show-Up, a popular neo-Nazi podcast. On the show, you regularly tell stories about being an EMT. often referring to your patients by racial slurs and comparing black patients to animals. Is that not a true statement?
Okay, let me clarify that. That's a fictional character. None of those stories and nothing in there in any way represents reality. It's all made up.
But it's made up in your mind.
No, it's made up.
Where's it made up?
It's a segment, and you can tell by the music, the sound effects, and the fact it's used as a commercial break. We also have another segment called The Merchant Minute, which also features very edgy shock comedy, and that is also very clearly made up.
I don't find anything entertaining, comedy, or
It
funny
doesn't
about
matter
it.
what you find entertaining.
Yes, it
The
does.
audience thinks
Yes,
it's
it
funny.
does.
No, it doesn't.
This does
My
matter.
audience thinks it's funny. Okay?
Did you say the heat brings out the wild in the Dindu, where Dindu is a racial slur for black people?
Tell it.
Did you say that?
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Wow.
Did you say as winter approaches, you, hey, I got the floor, buddy.
Tell it.
Go ahead, get mad, dude.
As winter approaches, the animals go into hibernation and the ridiculousness of the 911 calls goes down.
Right now, people
Come
are
on,
laughing
man, tell
right
it.
now at this somewhere.
Yeah, I don't see them.
Well, I've got a much bigger audience than you.
I ran rescue around here for over 10 years. I took it very seriously. Everyone that I ran rescue squad with was a compassionate, caring human being. Some of the best people I ever ran with, you have sullied that
I
reputation.
have never mistreated a patient in my entire career. I made that abundantly clear.
McNabb, did you not say that you referenced an apartment complex, which I understand is Cedar Square, that houses people from all over Africa and West Africa? Did you say that? He said emergency workers called it Ebola Alley. Did you say that?
That's not a
Did you
reference.
say that you then called a black woman a Dendwisha and compared her to a shaved Harambe, which was a gorilla, a famous gorilla, which I treated as a patient?
Tell it.
And let me tell you, that gorilla had a sense of who she was.
Come on, tell it.
And a sense of dignity, I may also add. It's hard to find a Dindu vein anyway because they're black. Did you say that?
Yeah, it's in my show.
Do you know how many black veins I have hit personally in my career? Many. They are not any more difficult to find than white veins.
How many cats?
I was in rescue and I worked in East Africa in medical research.
Tell it, doctor.
I hit a lot of veins.
Did you get attacked by any alligators?
You weren't there. Yes, I've been attacked by alligators.
I know.
I've been charged by elephants.
Tell it.
And I've put up with a lot
So
worse
now
than
that
you.
you've clarified that that's a comedy routine and that it's a
That
funny
there was
sketch,
an unruly
what-
young African American male child running around and that your whatever you call
my
him,
fictional
Dr.
emergency
Narcan,
room, yeah.
terrorized that youngster with a needle and stabbed him in the arm using an improper needle size. Did you say that? Did you make that up? Do you think that's funny?
I think it's funny.
Tell it.
I don't.
My audience thinks
And to even have a thought
they don't
like
think
that,
you're funny though. They don't think you're funny at
to
all.
even have a thought like that is repugnant.
It sure
You're
is.
talking about torturing children who are in your care.
Tell it.
It's free speech, buddy. It's free speech.
It is free speech, but not in the back.
Your moral
Not in the back of an ambulance.
convinces no
Not
one.
where you are placed in charge. Not where you
When
have
I'm on
the
duty,
ability
I'm a
to
professional.
actually torture
Well,
people like
tell it.
this.
Tell
You
it.
shouldn't torture children.
Amen.
I've never.
You
tortured a
shouldn't
child.
think about torturing children.
Amen.
I've done comedy routines.
This is not comedy.
I'm sorry that you don't think that's comedy, but my
No,
audience.
this is racism.
It sure
This
is.
is
Yeah.
unadulterated
Well, we have free
racism,
speech,
and it's
buddy.
Nazism.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
you do,
I'm
but
not a Nazi. I'm
not
a
in the
Nazi.
back, not in the back of an ambulance.
Well,
and if
that-
you're not a
that's
Nazi,
professional.
you certainly subscribe to
Tell
many
it.
of their views.
Tell it. Yeah.
Why don't you not dictate to me what my views are? You can start there.
Well, I'm trying to find out if you have any.
Well, so you're going to read through
objections
what
still,
the
but-
HuffPost
All
smear
right.
piece says to find out about my views? I mean, you can tune into my show anytime. You can tune in we air Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Feel free to tune in. TheRightStuff.biz. Check it out.
I just don't think
maybe,
you should
maybe
be.
you don't have a sense of humor.
I
so
don't think
may
you
not
should
like it.
be in the back of an ambulance.
Well, we can.
I don't
legally
think you
test
belong
that.
as a caretaker
No.
at any level of our whole care system.
But because of my off-duty comedy routine, that's why.
It's not off duty, it's in your head.
I mean,
this is what you
does
think.
Dave Chappelle
You
have a
are
right to be?
repugnant. You're disgusting.
Yes, he is.
Does Dave Chappelle have the right
Yes, he
to be an
is.
EMT? He's done routines where he plays a Klansman.
He's not an EMT.
Does he have a right to be an EMT?
I don't know. Does
Well,
he-
he's done material that's racist. He's played a Klansman. This man has played a Klansman on television.
I wouldn't think he's racist. I wouldn't.
Why? Because he's black? Because he's black? That's why he's not racist? You're saying that you can do racist routines if you're black, but not
I
if
think
you're
Dave
white?
Chappelle tells it is a matter of taste, but in your case, what you're espousing here are hate-filled things.
It's not hate.
It is
It's
racism.
comedy.
It is racism, and it's Nazism.
Man, you guys just really have no sense of humor. It's sad.
We have
You
a
should-
sense
you
of
should
humor,
tune into the
but there
show.
are times when you have to stand up against people like you.
People like me, what have I done exactly?
Because people like you divide people.
I mean, if I recall
In a
correctly,
violent, horrible
if it
way.
wasn't for me, there would be people that would be dead right now in this community because I saved their lives.
Oh,
when
baloney.
I'm
You
on
know,
duty, hey,
all
shut up,
the years-
shut up. When
No,
I'm
you
on duty,
shut up. I've got
I'm a
the floor.
professional.
That's it. That's it. That's right. We've heard your comments. Thank you very much.
Now I'm gonna tell you, because I ran rescue for all those years with a lot of people. No, I've got to tell this. Never once did I hear anybody say, I saved the life. The system saves the life, not you. And the system doesn't need you.
Jerry, what are you doing?
I'd like to say something to y'all.
Please do.
What you've done is you've glorified this guy because you're standing here on TV.
Thank you, Jerry.
And all you're doing is arguing, and no one is making a point. The only one I've heard so far this evening make a point is Mr. Williams. Because he is at least sharp enough to know that if you fire this guy and you do this, I've employed people. I know what it's like to
have too,
fire. I've
Jerry.
hired and
I
fired
have.
hundreds of them.
Yep.
And you cannot just fire somebody because of their statement if you ain't got your ducks in a row. And
You can
better
fire
have your
them
duck-
for-
I'm not here to argue with you, Lyle. You
Okay.
just shut up when I'm saying it.
Amen.
You don't have no justice right in the county. Look like a bunch of hicks, and we're not.
Oh, yeah.
We're good, yeah. Well, yeah, and
I know how I've been treated.
I understand how you've been treated,
No,
and
you
I
don't.
understand
You don't.
how
No, you
you've
don't.
been
No, you
treated.
don't. You don't know
not
how I've been
understand.
treated. You know how you think I've been treated.
Right. Ms. Spencer.
Ms. Spencer.
You can't win with people that don't stop.
Truth will set you free.
Would you mind recognizing me from?
I'd be glad
as
to
I
recognize
stand?
you from where you stand.
Cause it will be brief.
Okay.
For Mr. McNabb, for the board, although I've read that his characterizations that you've pointed out are fictional. And I might point out to you as well that Roseanne Barr's character of Roseanne Connor was also a fictional character who made hate speech on and off the show. She is now dismissed from that show. Okay? So we are not in a position that we cannot. It's that we choose not. And for Mr. Williams, please recognize Karen Spencer, because this won't be the last that you hear, and we will battle if necessary, but I don't recognize you as having carried out hate speech, but I do recognize you to be wrong. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this is very important, and I will be quiet, I promise.
Very brief.
Very brief. All of you that have been patting when this neo-Nazi came up, ask these individuals up here. When Mr. Boyce was reading the information that he had that was looking down upon black people, guess what? He had the biggest smile on his face. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Did he not have the biggest smile on his face when he was reading this? It was like it was a joke to him.
Well, I'm a comedian.
No, you be quiet, I'm talking.
Sorry, dude.
You be quiet, I'm talking now. I forgot the floor, okay? He had the biggest smile on his face like it was a joke. There's nothing joke about being down, looking down upon people. Let me make that clear to you, okay? I don't care who you are a member of. This stuff needs to stop. We're living in the 21st century, okay? And you're going to laugh at black people and call them animals? I'm smarter than you ever thought you was, son.
So to be clear,
That's
we
all
can't
I
make
want.
certain
Thank you
kinds
very
of
much.
jokes in
Thank
this
you.
country.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna temporarily suspend public comment. And what we can do is I'd like to see if there's any comments from the other members of the board. Ms. Fulton.
Mr. Boyce, I'm on the list.
I know, I'm gonna temporarily suspend it and then we'll get back to it.
I think mine might be somewhat relevant.
Oh, okay. You're on the list to talk about this subject?
Yeah.
Then I'd love to hear from you.
I'm Alan Black with Blue Ridge District, and I'm the county attorney. Over the last 5 days, I've had 3 phone calls, somewhat lengthy conversations, and 2 letters from Naomi Hodge Muse, who is the president of the Martinsville and Henry NAACP, and I think she's also covers this area too as well, Patrick County. And the last conversation I had with her, she wanted me not to read the letters that she had prepared, but simply to relay her message. And first of all, she's very disturbed by the blog and Twitter post by the EMT, and she's disturbed that someone with such racist beliefs is serving the public in Patrick County. She talked about how much she enjoys the scenery in Patrick when she travels through here, and also she recognizes that Patrick has had some issues in the past with racism. She thinks that the investigation by the state should run its course, and that the Patrick Board and Jeb Stuart Rescue Squad should wait to see how the investigation turns out. She does not recommend that Mr. McNabb be fired because she is suspicious that what he wants most of all is to be viewed as a victim and martyr for his beliefs, and that he can then use his martyrdom and victimhood to promote more hatred and notoriety for his internet programs and his followers. Yeah. So, given her position as president of the NAACP, that her viewpoint may be somewhat inconsistent with what you've heard tonight. But that comes after, like I said, several long conversations and 2 letters, and that was the last thing she relayed to me and asked me to present that to the board tonight.
Thank you, Alan. I would like to ask you a couple of legal opinions just that I've heard. I have gotten separate legal opinions on this from an independent attorney. And his opinion was that hate speech may not be protected by the First Amendment. It is regulated, just like every other item in the Second Amendment he mentioned has regulations to it. You can't have a fully automatic weapon, for example. And he said that the First Amendment has regulations in it too. And he said that reading some of the comments that Mr. McNabb has posted, that these actually cross the boundaries, some of them, from just simple hate speech to being threats.
That's right.
And the other thing that, as I know from Jerry's employed a lot of people, I've employed a lot of people, I've had people complain about wrongful termination. It does go to a VEC hearing. I don't think you get sued over it. And I also know that you got cause, you can fire somebody in Virginia. It's a right to work state. You can fire him for the color of his shoes. As long as you're not firing him for one of those federally protected issues about race or ethnic background or religion, you can fire him. And I noticed that just yesterday in California, there were some workers going through the debris, cleaning up the debris after that horrible campfire fire, and they found a poor body of a burned cat, and they positioned a beer bottle in the cat's mouth, and they took a picture, and these guys were fired within minutes of posting that.
That's right.
They were fired like that.
Right.
And these were union workers. So I don't see that there's any real precedent to fear in firing Mr. McNabb. And I think that what that does is it does send a strong signal that Patrick County will not tolerate this kind of activity. We will not tolerate this kind of thought in our healthcare system or hopefully in our law enforcement or judicial system. Now, if he wants to go out here and continue his podcast, that's fine. If he wants to stand out on the stairs and make his speeches, that's fine. What I would hope for Mr. McNabb is if somehow, he meets some people who change his mind.
Amen. Yes.
And that he gets some experiences in his life, which is still very short. And that in those experiences, he finds the richness of the diversity of humanity on the face of this earth.
Amen.
And that he realized why so many of us are so severely offended
Amen.
by his speech.
Tell it. Very good.
So, I will entertain a motion that, as I put forward before, that we suspend all funding of the Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad.
We're still in the public session.
Let's temporarily come out of public session. I will entertain a motion that we suspend all funding and financial support of Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad until Mr. McNabb is terminated. I get a motion from the board?
We closed public comment?
Yes, I just did. We're gonna open it back up again, but I want to get this all out of the way. Well, got a motion? Anybody make a motion? Can't even get a motion, much less a second, much less a vote. All righty. Can I have a motion that the Patrick County Board of Supervisors condemns racist and Nazi ideology in our county and in our county government and public service entities in Patrick County? Can I get a motion for that? Mr. Fulcher. Ms. Harris, thank you. Is there any more discussion on this horrible subject? In that case, I'll take a vote. Ms. Fulcher. Mr. Fulcher.
Aye.
Ms. Harris. Mr. Weiss.
Please repeat the motion.
Motion is that the Patrick County Board of Supervisors condemns racism and Nazi thought in Patrick County and in all of our governmental agencies and in all of our publicly funded entities of any kind. This would include things like our rescue squads, our fire departments. It would include things like our clubs that we finance. Anything that we do in this county, there really is no place for this kind of hate speech that you've seen put up here today. We need to get along, and I think that's how it is. And so certainly I agree. So this is a unanimous vote. Let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back and continue with thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
To win the weekend, to win the well, that's absolutely right. But I know it. I'll tell you right now, I really
Get a word with him. Can we get a word with you?
Yeah, so we
that is the background.
It's written for me in the Williams paper.
I understand. We get you, I want that as the background, Louise. And we're still live with thousands watching right now. Louise, you want to get on my side? We can get you where Louise was. Get you back over here where Louise is. Louise, let me know when you're ready. And I'm going to back up just a little bit. You good, Louise? tell us how you're feeling right now and your thoughts about this. What's happened today?
Well, I'm sorry that the County Board of Supervisors didn't put all of the pressure that they could bring to bear to fire Mr. McNabb. I think Mr. McNabb should never have been hired, and I think that once his views were known, he should have been fired immediately. And I disagree very strongly, based on other legal opinions that I've gotten, with Mr. Wren Williams, who said that he can be put on administrative leave temporarily while we work this out. No, you can fire him. And firing him would have given us a strong thing. You can't go around and lead your life not doing the right thing because you're afraid of some potential, imaginary or not, lawsuit.
Right. But you do understand their view on it, though, right? You do understand their view on it, though, right?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Frankly, I don't.
Okay.
I mean, this is such a cut and dry thing to me, to my whole life experience and everything that America stands for, everything that's in our...
You're not afraid of a lawsuit toward the county for
Hell
firing
no,
him?
I've been sued a bunch here. I got rid of a school superintendent and got sued. I got rid of a hospital administrator who was a crook, and I got sued.
Well, how do you feel about him saying this is a comedy act and we're overreacting to that?
It's not funny. Nothing about racism and Nazi ideology is funny. I read his comments. He didn't deny them. What he said is not funny. My father's generation and my father fought across Europe to expunge Nazism from the face of the earth. And I hope that would be a more permanent solution.
Yeah. Where do you hope to go from here?
Well, you heard the board. That was a pretty sweeping resolution. We pretty well banned Nazism and racism from the entire county government or anything the county supports. I would be totally flabbergasted if Mr. McNabb ever rides in the back of an ambulance in Patrick County. And if he does, I will support some kind of class action lawsuit. I will support any kind of federal activity that we can get in here to clean this mess up.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Good, Louise? Thank you, sir.
Rodney, it's always good seeing you.
It's good to see you, sir.
Nice
Thank you very much
stealing your microphone.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
How you want?
Take yourself a break there, sir. Thank you.
This, the Williams family and I have been...
I understand. From this camera now, tell me what you think about what happened tonight.
Well, I'm not very pleased at all with what happened tonight. I think the board should have voted to actually fire this individual because I can't see my tax dollars being paid to a neo-Nazi that is, downgrades, looks down upon women and calls women and blacks animals. I'm not for that one bit. I think the board should have voted for this. I was appalled when there was dialogue between the chairman and this neo-Nazi, and when the chairman was reading articles that he admitted, this neo-Nazi admitted that he said that Mr. Chairman was presenting this information, and he was sitting here laughing at it, smiling, like he was enjoying.
Why do you think there's division here? Why did you think that they hesitated in backing Lock Boys tonight?
Well, while there was division, I believe that the chairman was right. I believe that he believes in equality for everyone. He looked at racism as being wrong. This guy, whatever his name is, McNabb or whatever, he believes that it's okay. Just like I presented when I was allowed to speak, I presented to the board and I presented to everyone that was here that the young lady that got killed in Charlottesville, she was not black. She was killed by a neo-Nazi. That the neo-Nazi said, this Richard Spencer, who is over those neo-Nazis, or one of the individuals, he said the big fat white woman, and I quote, the big fat white woman should have gotten killed. And if we allow racism to persist in this county, and we as individuals have to pay taxes and provide support for them, it's wrong. And the Board of Supervisors should have taken this up. And I'm appalled because none of them, other than the chairman, voted to fire this individual. And like I said, and lastly, I will say, and I made not a threat, but I promise that I will be bringing the big people in, lawyers, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and contacting them, to the FBI, because there's more neo-Nazis in this place tonight other than that individual. And having said all of that, I'm appalled at the board because other than the chairman, Mr. Locke, Mr. Boyce, other than the chairman, I'm appalled at even the supervisor for my district, I'm appalled because they would not vote on it. It appears that they're afraid of voting. They're afraid of the neo-Nazis. But here's one individual that's not afraid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your time.
One thing, he said that all of this was a joke. What do you think of that?
Oh, to him, yes, it is a joke to him. It was a joke to the individual that took that young lady's life up in Charlottesville. It was a joke to him. What did he say? He said, oh, I got to get to work. So he took off and drove and killed this young lady in the prime of her life. It was a joke. If anybody could have seen, and I hope that someone took pictures of this, if you could have seen him laughing, I mean, he had the biggest smile on his face. He was just laughing at everything the chairman said. It is a joke to him. It's not a joke to African Americans to be called names, to look down upon. As I said, I'm as smart as anybody in this room. I know that I am, not patting myself on the back. But for him to look down, and for him to a young child, to use needles, continuously sticking a young child in the arm and admitting that he did. Yes, it's a joke to him,
Mr.
but it's not a joke to us.
He's quoting this as being a comedy act. Do you look at this as a comedy act?
To him, it is a comedy act. And some people have said, well, he just wanted exposure. That may be the case. But sometimes, as I was explaining to some of the supervisors over there, they said, well, we need to pray about it. Yes, we do need to pray about it. But God wants us sometimes to put hands on our prayers, mouths on our prayers, eyes on our prayers, and feet on our prayers. And that's one of the reasons that I'm here now, is because I need to condemn it, not only myself, but we need to condemn it. And again, I thank the chairman, because I have the utmost respect for him for condemning racism in this county that he serves.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking a stand for what's right. Not taking a stand, but when you did.